Peace and blessings. I'm Sister Colette, your sister by nature. Welcome to Canning with Colette. And so today I'm going to be pressure canning some green beans, French style green beans, using a lemon garlic recipe. Okay, so that's what we got going on today. Get your notebook, take notes, and let's dive in. All right, and so I've got a few ingredients and utensils out already. I've got 4 pounds of my French style green beans back here, all ready to go. I've got 2 quarts of 1 quart of vegetable broth, 1 quart of chicken broth, both organic. And I've got my garlic, black pepper, salt, some lemon zest, and some lemon juice, all right? And as far as my utensils, these are all my canning utensils. My ladle, I've got my tongs here, my lid lifter, my magnetic lid lifter, jar opener, as well as jar tightener, my headspace ruler, my jar lifter, and my funnel. And I also have my regulator sitting out because I like to have my regulator out and ready for when it's time to place it on the pressure canner. All right. And so just to let you know about these measurements, I am going to be using 4 teaspoons of Celtic salt. I've got 2 teaspoons of ground black pepper back here. I've got I've got about 8 to 9 crushed fresh garlic cloves back here. It smells delicious. I've got 2 teaspoons of some lemon zest and 8 tablespoons of lemon juice. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and get my broth ready. So I'm going to add my vegetable and chicken broth to the stock pot. And then I'll go ahead and add in the seasonings. All right. In the meantime, over here, I have my pressure canner over here ready to go. What I mean by that is I've had some water in here, about 3 quarts of water filled in here, and I've got it on a simmer. All right. And so for my canner, those are the instructions to go ahead and put the amount of water that's required for my canner and bring that temperature up to about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's kind of like a little bit below a simmer. So I've got that. That's why you might see a little steam going over here. So the water is going to be ready for when the jars go in. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go ahead and start pouring this broth inside. This brand is a Pacific Foods organic vegetable broth that I'm using. Chicken broth, just to give it probably like a little added flavor. You don't have to use chicken broth. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and actually get my heat going on here. And start adding my seasonings. Let's just go for it. There's my salt. There's my pepper. Here's my garlic. Just love the smell of freshly squeezed garlic. I love it. Give that a little stir before I add the rest. And then what do we have left? We've got the lemon zest. All right. I'm gonna have to get a different type of spoon. Actually, I'll just use my little tool here. So there's my zest. Okay, and then here we go with the lemon juice. Freshly squeezed. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm just gonna get this going a little bit, get this heat up. And so what I'm going to do for this recipe is I'm going to be getting my green beans in these jars, stuff them in the jars basically, and then I'm going to pour the hot broth over them before I, of course, seal them. And while this is, warming up, getting nice and hot, I'm going to be removing my quart-sized jars out of my dishwasher. So I washed and sterilized them in the dishwasher. And so I'm going to be removing them and getting them set up on my countertop so that I can start getting my green beans inside them. All right, so I've got my green beans over here. I just finished washing my hands again, which I do often, unless I'm going to be wearing gloves. But so I'm just going to go ahead and get right to it. I'm going to start loading up my jars, excuse me, with the green beans. And all I'm doing literally is just packing them in the jars. And you really want to get as many as you can per jar. The more, the merrier. And you will be surprised. You know, it might feel like you're just smashing them in there, but they're going to make room for themselves in here. So, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. Once we add some liquid, they'll kind of loosen up a little bit, but definitely get them smashed in there. Looks pretty good, but it could even use more. We can always add more. All right. And so I'm using what's called wide mouth jars for this, which is really great for these type of green beans because they're so long. The wide mouth, you know, have a nice wide mouth, whereas the other jars that are called regular mouth, the mouth size is much smaller and it has like a neck on it. These are nice, pretty much straight up and down, wide mouth quart size jars. So. Now I do got to get them, I can't have them sticking up over the mouth, but you do got to get them in there. And I still got my broth over here kind of simmering now. I turned it down a little bit because I know I'm going to need some time to get these green beans in here. So we'll see how this goes. All right, almost there. Kind of excited about this. I usually just do my green beans plain, but I'm trying to get more into actually creating recipes so that my jarred food is already ready to go. And I don't have to worry about, you know, seasoning or anything like that because, you know, September, fall, winter is coming up. So homeschooling and all that's coming up. And I have really long days. And sometimes getting dinner together can be a bit much. Figuring out what I'm going to make and then getting it all prepped and then getting it all seasoned. So this is where jarred food really can be very convenient. However, I will say I am on a no jar challenge right now where I'm really trying not to use any of my jarred food until I get my supply up to where I really want it to be. It has kind of gone down. I'm not feeling comfortable about that. So I'm not going to be eating any of these jarred food for a while until I really get my supply up. All right, so I could even use more, and I do have more green beans, but I'm gonna snap this one in half. Some of them, if they're really too long, it's okay to snap them in half, or maybe move it to another jar. All right, this one, look how long this one is. Wow. This is gonna be delicious. I love long green beans. Okay, all right, so we're gonna get started with getting ready to get our broth inside of here. Now I'll give you a little peek inside what's going on here with the broth. And it smells so good. And it looks good too. So I'm really excited about this. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get ladling. I'm gonna grab my funnel and I'm just gonna start jar by jar adding the broth. And so I'm going to stop when I get to a 1-inch headspace. I probably should hold on to this. Oh, there we go. Push that down. I'm going to stop when I get to a 1-inch headspace. And I'll bring the camera down so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. We're almost there. Okay, let me bring the camera down and see if you can see what I'm talking about here. Okay, so I'm only going to bring the liquid up to about 1 inch headspace. So that means, I'm not going to fill it up to the rim, the mouth of the jar. I'm going to leave a 1 inch of space open with no juice, no food, okay? That looks about an inch. I usually eyeball it first, and then I'll come behind and actually measure with my headspace ruler, okay? All right, so that's what I'm going to do first. So I'm going to come over to this one now. Okay, there we go. I'm going to stop there because it looks like it's at about 1 inch. Might need to add a little bit more, but we'll figure that out. All right, so guess what? I have ran out of the broth. So I only had enough broth for 4 quarts. So, and actually I got to go back and let you guys know, I think originally I had added, when I first started making this batch, I used like 1.5 quart. But then I went and added another full quart. So there's still like 1/2 quart in here, but it's not going to be enough for these 2 jars. So it's basically, a quart per quart. So that kind of makes sense, pretty much. So I have these 2 extra jars here, right? So this is what I could do. I could do a couple of things. I could make some more broth, which ain't nobody got time for that. Or I could even add my seasoning, a little bit of seasoning to each jar, and then just fill it with water. And so what I've done is I have already heated up some water in my tea kettle. But I don't think I'm going to add the seasonings. I'm just going to do straight water. So that way I know exactly what I have, because I feel like if I add the seasonings, it may look similar to these over here, and they're not going to taste the same. I don't want to be disappointed thinking I'm getting something that I'm not. And I may not be able to tell which is which once I put them in the canner and take them out. So I'm just going to actually do 2 plain jars. I'm just going to fill these with water up to a, inch headspace. And this is fine. No big deal. Like I said, this is normally how I do my green beans anyway. I usually just do them plain, or I'll just add the seasoning. This is my first time actually doing a broth. Okay, so there we go. So there we go, a little teaching moment there. And so now we're going to go ahead and start measuring the headspace on these jars with my headspace ruler to make sure that we've got these measurements right. Okay, so here we go. What I'm going to be doing now, if you look at this headspace ruler, in case you're not familiar with it, it has a few notches on it. So each notch represents a measurement. This first notch represents a 1/4 inch. This one is a 1/2 inch, 3/4, and a full inch headspace. So since this recipe calls for an inch of headspace, I'm going to be placing this ruler with the notch here on top of my jar there. Okay. Inside, like this here. Hopefully you can see that. So here's the notch that represents an inch. Okay, this here. And bring it on over here and place that notch on the top of the jar, the mouth of the jar there. And so what should be happening is I don't want the food to come up past the bottom of this tip here. So if the food is coming up or the liquid is coming up, then I'll have to remove it. Now, if the food is below, I'll have to add some more liquid, okay? So this is where it kind of comes and goes. Sometimes you have to add more, remove. It gets a little hit and miss, okay? And especially with, these green beans, they're kind of sticking up, so I'm going to have to push some things around a little bit. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, my tripod the leg just broke on it. So I'm struggling over here. So I'm hoping that this camera holds up and doesn't collapse while I'm trying to show you this. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do actually is just kind of smash these green beans that are kind of sticking up. So I'm going to just kind of get them smashed down as much as possible. The ones that are like peeking up. I don't want them peeking up too much. Okay, so there we go. That's pretty good. Okay, if like maybe a little tip is picking out, but you don't want too much picking out. So that looks pretty good. Let me just bring the camera up and see if you can see what I did there. See how they were sticking up like these? So I just took this and I just smashed them down. Okay, and so now I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it on that inch notch and see where I stand. And look, I think I hit it dead on. The tip is right at the top of the liquid. Perfect. Okay, if this was down in the liquid, then that would mean I would need to remove some. If it was up, that would mean I would need to add some. But this is perfectly where it needs to be. Wow, I love that. All right, so let's try the next jar. Now here we go. Y'all bear with me, please. I'm going to work on this jar now. Same thing. Actually, I'll hold this camera up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to push them down. Get them out the way. They're not sticking too much far above the liquid. Okay. That's not too bad. All right, so here we go. Now let's measure. This one kind of looks low. I can tell. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it's not touching the liquid. It's pretty far up above. Okay, so I'm going to need to add a little bit more liquid. And I do have some more broth left over. I'm going to add a little bit. Sometimes it just takes just a little. A little bit more, I think. Okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. Actually, no. I'm going to add just a little bit. Just a smidget more. Okay, that's probably where I need to be. Yeah, that's good. It's right at the tip. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do for all of these. And you see how, you probably, when you first see this, you're thinking, oh my God, there's way too many green beans in it. But see how I told you, you're going to be able to maneuver, after the fact. So let's do that for this one over here. Let's try this one over here. Let's move them down. Get them moved down. Just got to scrunch them down. It's okay that you're kind of smashing them down now. All right, that looks pretty good. Not too bad. Okay. These ones are kind of all over the place. They'll get a little bit softer and then they'll push down some. Okay, now I'm just going to measure. I'm really concerned about the liquid. Now it's interesting. Now this one, not sure how well you can see this. Okay, see the tip? Now I'm going to get it nice and even. If you see that, it's actually going into the liquid. We don't want that. That's too much liquid in there. So in this case, I'm actually going to have to remove some of the liquid. All right. Okay. All right. So I will usually use a baster. I used to use a spoon, but I find that using a baster makes it so much easier. Okay, I'm just going to take a smidget out. Be careful because you can get a lot of juice out with that baster. And then you got to wind up adding more. Okay, so that looks like it's dead on now. Just needed to remove a little bit. And you just got to push these down a little bit more. But they're pretty okay. It's okay if just a couple are poking up. All right, I'm going to move on over here. Same thing. Push these down. All right. There we go. That looks good. Now let's measure. Ooh, that looks dead on. Dead on. All right. So this is the ones that just have the water. All right. So same thing though. I got to get these smashed down in there. There we go. And see, now you realize you could have, it's interesting, it's like you could have probably added a few more green beans in here once you start really smashing them in there. Okay, let's see how this one looks. I think I need a little bit. Yeah, it's not quite. I could use a little bit more liquid. Just a little couple drips. All right. Just another drip or two. Okay, I think that's it. All right. Yeah, that's good. All right, so last one. Don't be afraid to just smash these down. It's okay. They're still going to be just as delicious. All right. Oh, this one looks dead on, but let me double check. It's kind of like checking the oil. You got to do it a couple times. Okay, no, this could use some more liquid. All right. Yeah, there we go. Well, you know what? Now I feel like I added too much. I'm going to take a smidget out. Just a little bit. Yeah, perfect now. Perfect. All right, so all of my jars are complete and filled up at a 1-inch headspace, which is the requirement for this recipe. So when we are canning pressure canning green beans, the required headspace is 1 inch. Okay, and you don't have to memorize that. Any type of canning book that you have, like this one per se that I have sitting up here, is going to be very precise as far as how much headspace is required for that recipe. So don't worry about how am I going to remember, is it a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch? Just go by what the recipe is telling you.